Okay, it's 12:30, so thank you to everyone who has logged on. I'm Sarah Rain. I am the Chief Executive Officer at the Howard County Association of Realtors, and we are thrilled today to host Dr. Lawrence Yun, who is the Chief Economist and Senior Vice President of Research for the National Association of Realtors, to give us an economic outlook for 2025. So we hope that you get some good information and it helps you in your business. This is being recorded, so it will be available for replay to anybody you know who was unable to make it. And now I will turn it over to Dr. Yoon. So Dr. Yoon, take it away.
Thank you, Sarah, for inviting me to share some of my thoughts with you all in Howard County. I guess it's almost a stone throws away from where I am in Washington, D.C., or maybe I should correct myself, not a stone throw, but now the traffic jam is getting worse and worse. The past 2 days, I noticed a sizable increase in automobile traffic coming into Washington. Washington had been pretty much hollowed out for the past 4 years. Federal government employees pretty much working remotely. But now with the mandate, return to office 5 days a week, also the buyout plan that was offered, I don't know how many people took it. What we are hearing is very, very small number took the buyout condition. But the Washington is clearly on edge. People are wondering whether Elon Musk and his team will knock on the door. So there's a lot of dynamics, especially here in the local DC greater market. Howard County, in terms of metropolitan definition, it actually goes to Baltimore. So Baltimore and the Baltimore County and the surrounding county would be the greater Baltimore metropolitan area. But we all know there are so many people living in the Baltimore region, commuting to DC, and reverse also the case. So let me quickly go into the market condition and what you can anticipate, especially here in the greater DC area where there's so much discussion taking place regarding the government employment and such. So let's go to the slide. All right, first, on a national basis, before going into the Howard County data, is showing that business condition was pretty awful last couple of years. I thought that we would get some recovery in 2024. The recovery really did not take place. And also, I thought the Federal Reserve would be cutting interest rate from spring of last year. That turned out to be incorrect. Rather, Federal Reserve cut interest rate from September. All these factors essentially sort of delayed the recovery process. And we really need a recovery because home sales number has been quite awful, lowest in 30 years. So two of the most difficult year for home sales. You can see from 2019, where you may consider that to be normal. And in fact, 2018, 2017, 2016, 5 years prior to pre-COVID, home sales were running about 5.5 million annually across the country. We had 2 good years when the interest rates were low. And then when interest rate went up, well, sales really came down and the lock-in effect with very few listings coming onto the market greatly hamper the market aside from interest rate conditions. So two of the most difficult year in 2023 and 2024. If we look at Howard County specifically in December, what one finds is that December sales still did not recover, down from 1 year ago. And if one looks at the listings, well, listings are down. Again, the lock-in effect remaining strong. Total listings on the market, only 176 in Howard County. In terms of population size, to say that there's only 176 active listing and below what it was from 1 year ago, again, tough, very tough condition. But one thing that's keep rising is home prices. So home prices rising, rising, rising. Clients of the realtors, they're all happy, but it's only that the realtors, mortgage originators, title insurance, You can't even say moving trucks or say a painting business, because usually the painting of the walls are more active during the transaction of a home sales. All that has been very depressed because we are not getting that home sales. And the days on the market being 24 is still implying if there is good listings, there will be buyers and there will be transactions. So right now, lack of listing really hindering some of the sales activity throughout 2024. And in Howard County, December still not yet recovering. You cannot see this figure, it's just too small. But I still want to highlight how Howard County fares in relation to Maryland. You can go to Maryland website, or this PowerPoint will be available to you, so you can bring out your magnifying glasses and look at the figure. The blue arrow is Howard County. So if you look at the total for 2024, sales were down, in essence, less than 1%. Again, 2 straight years of difficulty, but the prices were up 7%. So one may say that the dollar volume for real estate industry actually grew last year because the prices were at higher point. So even though sales, no meaningful movement in the price brought additional revenue for the brokerages operating in Howard County. If we look at the home builders market is much smaller. But what one sees it is that they actually grew 2 straight years. And in fact, last year's sales are matching up with pre-COVID activity, or is it slightly higher than pre-COVID? But essentially about the same as pre-COVID. You can say that the home builders are actually on their feet, while the realtors are still challenged, so the builders are back up. Why is the builders doing better than realtors? Because they have inventory. In fact, one looks at the month's supply of inventory. For some of you who are familiar with that terminology, look at supply and demand. We generally say about 4 to 5 months supply will be balanced. Well, for the builders, they have 8 months supply. Realtors have only 3 months supply. So you see the lack of inventory hindering realtor business, while the builders, they can create inventory, and because of that, they can increase sales, and that is what has happened across the country. But as I alluded to, your clients are in a good position. So your business opportunity was difficult, but your clients are super happy. And in fact, it may be worth a conversation with your past clients because they're in a good mood. Home prices in Maryland rose 41% from pre-COVID days. So we're looking at the first quarter of 2020 to the most recently available data, 41% price appreciation. In any given year or this 4-year time span, it would be considered sizable, 41% price appreciation. Say a $400,000 home now will be about $560,000. So going from 400 to 560,000, one can see the wealth gain for homeowners across Maryland over this time span. But interestingly, even the 41% is not an outperformer. The map is color-coded. Darker color is showing faster price appreciation. For example, Florida, 69% price appreciation. State of Maine, 72% price appreciation. And one may say that, relatively speaking, locally, Delaware, 53% price appreciation. There are not that many job creation in Delaware, but what Delaware has is remote work opportunity. There may have been some federal employees who had that remote work schedule, bought a home out in Delaware, more affordable, maybe closer to the ocean, but now return to office. Is this going to change some of the dynamics of DC area real estate market, which for clearly Howard County is one? So interestingly, some price variation. Maryland, 41%, very good, but below national average in terms of the price gain. Because of the price gain across the country, we are seeing record high household equity in real estate. We constantly talk about the stock market being record high or near record high. One day there was a little wobble in the stock market. Next day is the record. What is not talked about is homeowners having record high household equity. So chart clearly showing the case. Now, one thing I will say is the following. Because of the significant price gains, and thank you for some of you who participate at association committee meetings. I know that president of Howard County, they actively come to some of the NAR meetings, and then, through the realtor discussion, some committee work, NAR policy gets set. And one of the policy goals that we are sharing with members of Congress, we're talking with the Trump administration, is about lifting of the capital gains exemption. In the past, people bought a home and they sold their home, and whatever the profit, that was theirs. But today, more and more homeowners are facing tax implication from a sale of a home because it is exceeding the $250,000 exemption for a single individual and $500,000 for a married couple. So NAR is essentially trying to say that this exemption amount has not been indexed to inflation. It's been constant for the past 30 years. Let's index to inflation in the reverse course. So essentially, let's index to inflation over the past 30 years. We know the price of egg was much cheaper 30 years ago. Price of movie tickets much cheaper. So if we index to inflation, then what you find is that exemption amount would essentially double. So that's what we are pushing for. It's a fairness argument, from the time when they set this exemption to say homeowners, when they sell their home, that should pretty much be theirs. But right now, more and more homeowners are getting ensnared in that capital gains tax and also preventing listings. I'm sure you have some really past clients who purchased their home 15 years ago. Now, they are considering selling, but as soon as the accountants say there will be a tax implication, they quickly change their mind. So we want to encourage more inventory, and more inventory surely will come if there is a lifting of the capital gains exemption amount. So working on that, one of the top priority at NAR in this year as the Congress gets rolling, and certainly passing on the information to the Trump administration. The figure previously is the aggregate. This is per homeowner and renters. A chart that you may be familiar with, but maybe you don't know the figures. We know that homeowners build wealth over time, and the chart clearly shows that. While the renters in the red, they are not building wealth. They are simply spinning their wheels, some money in the bank, their automobile, but that's it. But for homeowners, they are building wealth through home ownership. It does include, say, 401k, but for most middle-class households, bulk of this blue bar would be from their real estate. So your past clients are doing well, and possibly some would be able to cash it out if they can sell their home. But lifting of the capital gains tax exemption, I think, surely will help facilitate some of that. But now with the buyer's agency agreement in place, definitely share this information with your first-time buyers. Americans who bought their homes in the past, whether it was 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, mortgage rate at 10%, mortgage rate at 12%, mortgage rate at 8%, it did not matter. They are part of this blue. But if they did not purchase home, then they're in the red, essentially nothing to show for. So show this graph definitely for the first-time buyers who may be asking a lot of questions, valid questions, but at some point, they need to know this factual information. Now, let's look at one-year price appreciation. So we saw strong price growth over the past 4 years, but what about for the past 1 year? Maryland is still showing positive, 4.9% price appreciation. So prices overall are not falling, still rising condition. If we look at timeline of price appreciation in several Maryland markets, what one finds is this chart. So we have the Baltimore MSA, which would include the Howard County. And then we have Frederick, the Hagerstown, and rural Maryland. Well, which is which? It doesn't matter. All markets pretty much move similarly. The big spikes, then the small price appreciations. Sort of in the middle, 2009, 2010, that's a negative price depreciation. That's when we had the record high foreclosures, those strange mortgages, subprime lending activity. Well, those things don't exist anymore. Today, we have one of the lowest foreclosure rates in history. So right now, prices on the positive territory. But if you look at the last data point, it is little over positive, not greatly over positive. So again, Maryland, 4.9% price appreciation from 1 year ago. Let's look at the monthly data. So annual figures show difficult condition the past 2 years. If we look at the monthly data, what we find is that for the past 3 years, sales have been falling. Again, higher mortgage rates, fewer and fewer listings on the way led to sales falling until October. October sales increased compared to 1 year ago. November similarly increased compared to November 1 year ago. More strengthening in December. Howard County did not get this, but the rest of the country is witnessing this growth. What happened in October, November, December? Did the mortgage rate go down? And the answer is no, mortgage rate did not go down. So why is the sales rising? And the answer is we are beginning to see more inventory. Increase in inventory from 1 year ago. It happened from about late spring last year. And given that consumers are able to see more choices, they are able to finally act upon it. Remember the home builders, they're doing more sales. Why? They have inventory. Well, realtors are now finally getting inventory across the country, not in Howard County, and that's why the sales are still down in Howard County. But in the areas where there is increased inventory, we are seeing more transactions. And even with the increase in inventory, let's keep in mind that it is still historically low. Maybe we have passed the absolute low point, but it is still low. We need another 50% growth in inventory. In Howard County, I would say even doubling the inventory would be a welcoming trend in terms of giving buyers more choices. So the lock-in effect that we constantly hear about, homeowners have 3% mortgage rate. There's no way they are going to give that up. But did you know that among 88 million homeowning households across the country, 88 million, the largest slice of the pie, they're blue, 35 million homeowners have no mortgages whatsoever. They are free and clear. They can move at any time if they wanted to. Now, if you look at the pink color or the peach color part, these are the homeowners who have mortgage rate at less than 3%. So you may say they are locked in, but if there are major significant life-changing events, additional child in the family, needing a larger size house, or maybe the elementary school was good, but some people have concern about middle school, so they want to change residence. Maybe there is a death in the family, they want to trade down, or maybe sons and daughters inherit the property, they don't want to know what to do with it, put it on the market. So with the passage of time, you see more inventory steadily appearing. And I think this is what we are seeing, that the impact of the lock-in effect loses strength. It is not as strong. The lock-in effect is not as strong with the passage of time. I think with each passing month, we will begin to see more inventory. Howard County data shows little delay. So you still have fewer inventory compared to 1 year before, which is hindering home sales. But I think as the rest of the nation see more inventory from life-changing events, surely Howard County will follow that trend. And one new factor for Howard County or the greater Washington area is needing to come back to office 5 days a week. This will change some of the calculus of some people. Maybe some people bought a home way out in the mountains or close to the ocean, but now they need to have home reasonably closer to DC. The MARC trains, some people drive to DC apart from Howard County, but the return to office could change some of the dynamics regarding the listings, relocating because of the special DC case of the federal employment. Let me go now to the forecast. Home sales historically depended on two factors: jobs and mortgage rate. Very common sense. More job, more home sales. Lower mortgage rates, more home sales. But this time, in this real estate cycle, I would say one new factor is important: inventory availability. And I talked to you already about we are seeing more inventory across the country, even though Howard County has yet to see that, but I think it's just inevitable that you will see. But let's look at jobs and mortgage rate a little carefully. Related to the jobs, Maryland, for some reason, has been a little sluggish in job creation. I color-coded it. Green is very good. They're those outstanding superstars. For example, Florida added 11% more jobs from pre-COVID March 2020. 11% more job. What about Maryland? Well, it's on the right-hand column. Less than 1% more job. Only place that is worse than Maryland is essentially District of Columbia. Many lunch counter shops closed down. There's no office worker coming to DC. So DC actually had employment decline over the past 4 years. So Maryland greatly trailing behind many areas of the country. I guess Louisiana and Hawaii also is not creating jobs, but being light blue means underperformer, below the national average. If we look at total jobs in Maryland, it is adding jobs. Towards the end, that's the COVID lockdown, coming out of the lockdown. So it's about 14% growth in jobs in the state of Maryland from year 2000 to 2024. So all this should be leading to increased housing demand. We know that home sales did not rise past 2 years. Just means that there are more people in the pipeline to potentially buy a home, provided the conditions are right. And the conditions are more inventory and maybe little lower mortgage rates. This is DC market. Is faster growth, 29% growth. So let me go back. Maryland, 14%. DC Metro, not the city, but the surrounding counties along with the city. Montgomery County, Prince George's County, suburbs in Virginia, so DC. Faster growth. Furthermore, look at the fluctuation in the job market. So here's Maryland, some fluctuation, but in the DC, far less fluctuation. Some people say DC is recession-proof. Well, historically, it has been recession-proof. Only now there's some concerns. Again, Elon Musk, buyout program, all this is indicating that the job of Elon Musk is to identify wasteful spending. Some are really crazy, government spending. Just cut it away. But let's hope they don't cut to the bone where they are really reducing some important service some government employees provide. But that's all under review right now. Washington, a lot of interesting development happening. So in the past, DC area recession-proof, but that could soon change based on what we are seeing here in Washington in the recent weeks. Mortgage rates. So blue line is what the Federal Reserve directly control. The orange line is what you care about, 30-year fixed rate mortgage, average rate. September, Federal Reserve cut interest rate. Then they cut interest rate in November and December. Federal Reserve will cut interest rate again this year, maybe 2 or 3 times. European Central Bank cut interest rate last week. So there's a lot of cutting of interest rate around the globe, and US Federal Reserve will also be participating in further interest rate cuts. But what happened to mortgage rates? It increased, indicating that mortgage rates are not controlled by the Federal Reserve. Maybe there's a concern about inflationary pressure. Remember this past weekend, everything was about tariffs. Tariffs will be inflationary. So maybe there was some concern. Or maybe very high budget deficit. What about Fannie and Freddie? Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac provide government guarantee of the mortgages, and that's why America has 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Other countries do not. NAR policy that through, with talking with all the realtors involved in committee work is to say Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac is important to keep the mortgage rate a little lower than under pure privatization. There are some people within the Trump administration who are thinking about privatizing Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. We will be opposed to that. President Trump has come out to say he wants to see mortgage rate lower. He wants to make homes more affordable. So I think President Trump will ignore some of the advices related to privatizing Fannie Mae. And if some advisors who are constantly trying to slash away some of the government, well, this will be the case where they're really hitting the knife to the bone. I mean, they're really cutting away some essential functions. But my guess is that President Trump will understand. President Trump is a real estate person. He understands mortgage rates. So I think he will say, yeah, let's keep Fannie and Freddie as is, because we don't want mortgage rate to suddenly spike even higher or 30-year fixed rate mortgages disappearing condition. So we will definitely be relaying this information here in Washington. But mortgage rate, I should say this, you see the gap between the blue and the orange. Well, with further rate cuts along the way in 2025, this gap simply cannot persist. I mean, I have other reason for it. I don't have time to explain it, but just view today's 7% mortgage rate average as sort of the peak. I think it will steadily go down. New normal, maybe 6.5%, maybe 6%. But don't expect mortgage rate to go to 4%. Did you know under first term President Trump period, back in 2017 to 2020, mortgage rate were at 4%, 5%. Are we going to get there? And answer is no. We're not going to get to what it was under the first President Trump's term. And the key reason is this: budget deficit, national debt, record high amount. Anytime government has to borrow money, it simply means it's eating up private capital, including some mortgage money. And lack of mortgage money is being reflected in higher mortgage rates. So very high national debt. We should recognize nothing is free lunch. Even things like student debt relief. Yeah, it sounds good for some people, but it's not free lunch. It's adding on to the national debt, which means little higher mortgage rates. And Elon Musk, he is tasked with identify wasteful government spending, slash it away. Let's hope he identifies those wasteful spending. We don't want government spending on wrong programs. But let's make sure they don't cut the muscle, they don't cut the meat, they don't cut to the bones, and do it in a prudent way. But if somehow this deficit begins to turn for the better, meaning reduction in deficit, then mortgage rate possibly could go down under 6%. But it's not going to go down because first blue arrow is when President Trump entered the office in 2017. Second blue is what he is facing today. So much government borrowing, mortgage rate simply cannot go down. So let me go to the forecast with my final chart. So this is what my statistical model is saying. Don't put seriousness into the numbers. It's what the model is saying. So conditions for increased home sales is developing. More inventory nationwide. Howard County, maybe just a matter of a few more months. We are seeing job addition continuing. Mortgage rate probably peaking now and likely to go down somewhat. Not in a major way, but even little reduction in mortgage rate help. All this factor is saying more home sales. Is it going to be 9% increase in home sales? Well, I'm sure it's not, but it could be 5% increase or even 20% increase. We have to wait and see. So the model is saying it will be an increase in home sales. I mean, some markets will clearly do better than others. Look at the job market variation across the country. But with more inventory expected to hit the market, the price growth will be more minimal, more modest condition this year, with some market like Austin, Texas, actually seeing some price reduction in Austin, Texas. But the mortgage rate near 6%, job gains continuing. So in other words, the worst is over, and I think one can anticipate better condition. 9% is the baseline forecast. The reality could be meaningfully higher than 9%, or maybe it will be just a small single-digit percentage gain, in the low single-digit percentage gain. We have to wait and see, but I think clearly the worst is over. But a lot of transitioning effect here in the DC region, for which Howard County is part of. So thank you very much. And now I am going to turn it back over to your CEO, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yoon. That was fantastic. And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. We hope that you got a lot out of it. Just a quick plug, visit www.hcar.org to see all of our upcoming webinars and events. And don't forget to register early for our conference to get the early bird pricing of $29. So thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.